presentation's having a few issues, but have we sorted that out yet? No, so, but feel free, I mean, it's gonna be a minute or two, we hope, only. Where's Louisa? She's back here. We'd like to welcome everybody here today. We're really excited, a lot of new faces that we haven't seen, and we tried to get as much information out and to as many outlets as we could to get people to come. So the more community input, the better this building's going to be. And I know from the last charrette we had, there were a lot of really good ideas that came out of it from people. Some people that are sitting here in the room, and those things will, hopefully, you'll see them in what they've come up with so far. Okay, that's enough for ab living. Closer.
I'm trying. Sorry.
Anybody want to come up and do a jig?
I had to do this. Sorry.
All right, now I'm going to turn it over to Kate.
How you doing? So you just did the agenda, basically. This is what they're doing. Yeah.
This is where I laugh because the kids would always know how to do something. You know, it's like I become the dinosaur that has no idea how to use the technology. Oh, is it right here? Yeah.
I'm gonna have my dots.
You get one set of dots.
That's all.
Did you get dots? I would love this exercise. That's today. So, Thursday, Friday? Oh, okay, yes, absolutely. All right.
I was just standing there.
Oh, okay. Yes, we're actually going to write what we like about it on it'll be posted online. Yeah, we are as transparent as can be. Oh, I should use this. So while the last couple of folks put their dots on the images, what I want you to do is sort of turn to the folks around you, and you'll see a white board, and there should be some markers. If not, raise your hand, and Phil and I can bring you over some markers. And amongst the folks you have around you, if you could just write down what you liked in the images, just because you put your dot there, it could be that you like the furniture, it could be that you like something else. So if you could just make a quick little list of the things that you saw in here that you were excited about, that would be awesome. So we'll spend about 10 minutes doing that, and then we'll go on to talk about the plan. Do you need a board? Okay, guys, we're just going to take another minute or two, and then what we're going to do is ask each of the groups to sort of report out what they're writing down so that we can share it, and when we publish this, that everyone in the community who's not here will be able to see what y'all are talking about.
Oh, gosh. Okay. We liked the wall as a whiteboard. Okay. We liked the wall as a whiteboard. We came up with outlets ample for increased technology needs. We wanted options for standing learning opportunities. We liked the tall tables, but there was some discussion about tall chairs and comfort with that. library and digital literacy space, making sure that there is one there. Cohesive furniture for student-teacher collaboration instead of teachers having to get way down low to talk to the students, having them up at the eye level of the students, and flexibility for future NAC and tech programs. Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, we started off by talking about we liked the fact that there was a library and having actual real books. Within that space, study spaces, even some small semi-private nooks for students that were working on things independently. We thought it was really important to have movable, changeable, modular seating. For example, in a literacy classroom, it might look different than an AP classroom. You know, you might have different projects going on, so to have furniture and things that can be moved based on the student needs. Green spaces, what else? Oh, what did we not like? Oh, we didn't like the garage door sort of motif.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, does someone want to?
I've been volunteered. We liked to think we wanted more of a balance of fixed and open spaces, like not too many open spaces because it can get too noisy, it can be really distracting, but you know, we do need some flexibility with that imbalance. The open spaces need to serve a purpose and be acoustically sound so that learning can happen and not too big. For furniture, we like the idea of the flexible seating, modular seating, and tables and some alcoves so that kids could be part of like a whole group lesson and then split because they'll all be working on like their capstones at that time. So it would be nice for them to be able to be together as a whole and then kind of separate into smaller groups within that classroom. We like the idea of like a courtyard, like a green space that could be utilized if it's nice weather. They can have their lunches out there or do some studying out there, that sort of thing. Sliding glass doors, big windows with lots of light. And we just started talking about technology, but obviously that would need to be a big feature at that point.
More savvy than I am.
We really like the openness of the cafeteria, allowing for easy entrance and exit during transition times. I work at a brand new school in Barrington Middle School, and that is a major issue that we found. There's only one hallway into the cafeteria, and as the 6th graders come out and the 7th graders come in, they literally have to walk single file to get down the hallway, and that's impossible. We really like the flexible seating opportunity within the classroom that's made possible by the mobility of the furniture. The giant whiteboard walls provide ample workspace. That's another issue that we've run into at our school. We have 3 whiteboards that are all connected, and the middle whiteboard is also the throw projector screen. So when you're throwing something onto the screen, it minimizes your workspace by half. So if you're showing a math problem on the board and then you're working on a math problem, you quickly run out of space. They've tried to fix the problem by having mobile whiteboards that kind of roll around, but when you're not using them, where do you put them? They're in the way. The engineering space that was in one of the photos that provides the opportunity for design, construction, and brainstorming. We really like that idea. The welcoming entrance, that's another thing that we've noticed at Barrington Middle School is it's very unwelcoming. When you walk in, it's almost like you're in a community college. It's a giant hallway, 3 stories high, and it's very wide. And when you walk in, it's very antiseptic. And you wonder, what about the 2nd and 3rd floor? You could have used that for more space instead of literally open air. The sight lines within the classroom, that's another thing that I noticed, that the sight lines it's very easy to see the board no matter where you are in the classroom. That's a major issue that we've run into in our science room, so I'm a science teacher. Our tables are tall, and the chairs are tall. The chairs can't be adjusted, but the tables can. So when the throw projector is throwing down, they throw downward. So when the students are sitting in their chairs and they're looking at the screen, they look down. So they're looking into the back of the people in front of them instead of up if the tables were lower. It's a major issue. So, and the classrooms in Barrington Middle School are very small now. And the reason why is because we asked for breakout spaces. But the breakout space that they've provided us is in the center of the hallway. It's kind of a horseshoe, and it's in the center. And it's large, but it's not large enough to fit an entire cluster. So basically, it's just large enough for basically another classroom in the center. It's open, but we sacrifice so much space in our classrooms that it's not worth having that breakout space. It's just not, because the classrooms are so small as a result. So small that with 28 students in my classroom, it's very difficult to even configure the chairs so that they can see the board, because it's a throw projector down. So there's just these little things that I notice in these designs that are really nice, because it's very open sight lines, which is nice. And then security, like that's one concern that we saw. I know that the current Rogers High School has doors everywhere, so it's impossible to keep that secure. I will say, like at Barrington Middle School, one of the positives is the way that the building is locked down is state of the art. And basically, I think I saw that in the welcoming entrance, yet it's still secure. I saw the glass kind of enclosure. Basically, at Barrington Middle School, you get buzzed in to a holding cell. That's really what it is. It's a clear holding cell made of bulletproof glass, and the secretaries sit right on that bulletproof glass so they can see whoever they've buzzed into this cell. And once they deem them as worthy, they can either be buzzed into the office, and once they're in the office, they need to get buzzed out of the office. And then, or if it's like somebody that they recognize as somebody who just forgot their keys, they can just buzz them into the building from their seat as well. So hopefully that's something that we're thinking of as well.
All right, our group was basically this hinting on the security of the building is the open glass and able to see whether it's students or teachers, they can interact better with the students and vice versa. The open classroom setting is a main theme. Giving students the ability to have study areas, whether it be like the bench seating that we saw in those pictures, where students can interact and work on projects more feasibly. Student-led learning, we saw that as a theme in a lot of those pictures over there. And let's see. Yeah. So the compactness, open space, the comfortable seating and furniture that we saw, the terrace, I guess tailored for the winter months, is good to have. The don'ts, I guess the JROTC in the lower level, nooks and crannies where the visibility is not too clear is a don't. So that's basically the open setting, and so that students can interact with each other and teachers is very important for the learning. So.
No, okay. All right. Yeah.
Easier? All right, I did that.
Oh, actually, I think it goes in the front. Oh, okay. No, we got one more.
some points that I picked up, listening to what some other people are saying, is that I especially like the areas where there are opportunities for flexible grouping on the part of the teachers and on the part of the students too. What I'm interested in is the traffic flow from one area to another or within a classroom. I had a question about the high ceilings in some places, understanding that maybe some of these are in the southwest or in warmer areas, but understanding the need to economize, that's an important point. The use of the ambient lighting is what we've incorporated in some of the, like here and elsewhere. The colors, this might seem minor, but the colors are quite vibrant in many places. We don't need to be dull and put everyone to sleep, but you also, some colors can kind of, wire up some folks, and even some of the patterns too. That might seem minor, but it's something that people have spoken about in other schools in the past. I like the idea of multiple uses of the various spaces, that the word keeps coming up, no wasted space, and yet you have to have attention to the traffic flow within a classroom in the, we call them hallways, pathways, so that you're not having congestion either. An important point that I can only pick up in a little bit in some areas here is storage space. And this is something probably every teacher says, we need storage space for stuff. Even though a lot of items are, a lot of work are on the computers and the other kinds of technology, you need a place to put your stuff. So that's about the points that I picked up traveling around and the things that really came to mind for me.
Well, thank you everyone for your participation. Now I want to sort of go through and basically provide you a brief summary. Rather than just talking about the plans, I think it's important for you to get a sense of why they look this way, why things are next to each other in the way that they are. And all of this has been happening for a year and a half or so. We've had a lot of conversations, a lot of discussions, charrettes. We've had community info sessions with specific groups and the greater community, all of which has been building to pulling these nuggets of information out and looking for the common themes that we're hearing from each of them. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time. This will be published on the website, but we generated these plans with all of these ideas in mind. And so we had a number of different sessions with students where the administrators are not there. The kids are able to freely speak about what they want to see in their school. It was a cross-section of different students, whether it was students who are in all different types of programmings, athletics, music and arts. So lots of different interest groups and different things were all represented in a lot of these sessions. And so what we heard from them was sort of these items here. And again, I'm not going to read all of them, but what we heard here, teachers who are not lecturing as much, that they don't want lecture anymore, that they're flexible spaces, that they can be working alone, and some of that breakout spaces reflect some of that. That spaces are multi-purpose, so that you can have lots of different things, and that creates a flexibility that we need here. Okay. Well, you can stand there. You can be my Vanna. So even as early as last May, I believe, we were meeting with a large group of representatives, the ad hoc committee, and when we had some sessions with them, they echoed a lot of the same ideas that the students did. Having greater prioritization of social emotional support space for students was really something we've actually heard from everyone is a very important thing. The connection between the high school itself as well as the community and how that was important. The different modal departmental learning models, using hands-on, and it was sort of the thing that was said is, from learning about IT to filleting a fish, all these skills can be transferred to whatever someone becomes, what they choose to do. Demonstration and reflecting the sort of pride of students by having things on display was really important. And then we also had a lot of meetings with the teachers where we talked about, again, social emotional space being really important for kids right now. We wanted to have, the teachers want more time sort of casually spent with students. It seems right now that there's a lot of rigor in their schedule, and to have some of the time for that sort of breakout moment to spend and get to know kids better was very important for them. To make sure that they have the proper PD to make sure that they're able to utilize this space in the way that they can will require some training and continued services for teachers. Making sure that the English language learner population is really supported in this new school is very important as well. So we've touched base many, many times with the director of English language learners and the special education to make sure that those folks are represented in what we've been developing. So this is some of the work that many of you who are here have been involved with in the past, looking about inspired spaces, similar to the exercise we did today. We went through an exercise where we talked about needs, wants, and dreams, sort of to prioritize the spaces. And then these are some of the bubble diagrams which we developed in the past, and we'll take some time at the end to look back, and there's a very fancy diagram that's been developed by one of you folks. So looking at the different ways things come together. And that's really an important piece for us to see because it shows us what you're prioritizing individually, and then we can extrapolate that. So this was a bubble diagram which represents all of those bubble diagrams that you've done as a community, as teachers, students. And this basically is taking all of those ideas and what does it look like if it was one building. And again, we can look at this in more detail. I do want to get to the fun stuff, so we'll go through this. And the next couple of slides are just little blurbs. So looking at the types of spaces and the relationships. So media, this is sort of the learning communities. Uh-oh, Phil. What have you done now? There we go. So like whether you could do a STEM and a humanities, or you could do different academies or grade level configurations, the way that the building is shaped is flexible for whatever happens educationally in the future. We know that there's a lot of folks who are, want to have a lot of input into that. And the part about the building is that it'll be able to support any way that education changes. So some NACTEC zones, art and theater and how that sort of comes together. The athletics. And so I wanted now to explain to you what all of these spaces and how those bubbles became a building. So as you can see, we've mentioned before that this is the only parcel of land that the city owns that is large enough to support a building, and the school building committee has made the determination that this is the site we are moving forward with, that the program of spaces were adopted, and they voted to move forward with those spaces at the last school building committee meeting. So we were able to take those spaces and turn them into a building. The concept here is that, as you can see, the new building would be constructed on the athletic fields, which is actually, this portion is a whole story lower than this portion here. And so it allows for the play of the different levels and to allow light to get into some of so we don't have any basement spaces. We want to make sure that there's natural light and views into and out of every space, particularly where students will be occupying. So in this, you'll also see that There's access for construction to happen, which will not impede the existing building. So as a concept, all of the budgeting that we've been putting together is based on a 2-year construction schedule. And what that is we would build the whole new building while the kids are still occupying the existing high school. And then basically, the kids would walk out in September for the last day of school. The building would come down, the old building, and then the next September, they would walk into a brand-new high school. Yes, it absolutely is. That is a scale drawing. So you can see how overly large the existing building is. Sure. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah, and we would be have that scheduled during the summer where they're not students occupying the campus at that point too. So, right now, construction technology, that's very important. Obviously, we will make sure that there's nothing that would be harmful in any way to any students. And in fact, doing this construction concept is actually better because the students, there's not an additional renovation situation where the kids are actually in a building that's being worked on. So.
For the new building, how many kids are you figuring in for each class, and is there flexibility if you would have more kids coming to put them in this school?
So we are mandated by the state, the Department of Education, because we're seeking reimbursement, to have gone through a demographic study. We had a demographer creative forecast for growth in Newport. We are required to use the number which is 5 years from now in our estimates, and there's no wiggle room there, unfortunately. That number is 755 students. I believe right now we're at about 695 in the current school, so there is growth built in. There also will be change. So there's an assumption that there'll be roughly 24, 25 students per class, but there also is the number of classrooms is based on an occupancy factor of 85%, which means that teachers will share classrooms so that they are able to achieve a greater percent of utilization of that room, so that two teachers might share a room, so that when one teacher isn't teaching, the room isn't sitting empty, that someone else is able to use that. It's very similar to like a collegiate model where an educator comes in, they have office space somewhere else, and then during class time they come in and teach their lesson. If it's science, it's in a science room, and a lot of other classrooms. You can set the classrooms up to be kind of focused on certain departments, but not, you can also choose not to do that. That's sort of up to the educators. Correct. Yes, that is correct. Yeah, so it would be 100% on the taxpayers for anything you build larger than the ride requirement based on that 755 students. Correct. So I want to get into sort of looking in a little more detail. This is would be the lowest level. It is not called a basement because none of it is underground. In this is the lowest level, so it would be on the field level. And in this area, we have, you can see this is where we would have the gym. The associated gym spaces are in purple and lavender here, so offices, trainers, locker rooms, storage for PE, and then on the left here, in the rear, there would be an access path and some parking, and you'd have a loading dock where you'd get loading and equipment into the building in the rear there. On the sort of right-hand side of the plan here, we have some of the tall, higher bay spaces. Currently, they're moving forward with 3 maritime programs and JROTC, all of which require a higher ceiling. So that's why they're sort of grouped together in this lower level. And these are associated classrooms, which would be for those programs so that they have a classroom nearby when they're doing classroom instruction.
So the big purple space is every sport, like football, baseball, volleyball. It's the gym. Where would the football team get dressed? This, that.
These are the locker rooms here. Yep.
So if they go into that building, a lot of the athletes have dinners after. Can they access the cafeteria from there?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so once they're in the building, they'll be able to open up?
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely. So you can see this little line here indicated on the plan. The idea would be that the academic portions of the building could be locked in the evening so that the community functions would be able to serve after-hours uses. So here, this portion would not be accessed in the evening, but this portion would. And if you look here, this is a large stair that goes up to the next floor and comes up right here, and now that's where the cafeteria is. So it's sort of directly next to where the gym is. It's just on a lower level. And the gym is 3 floors of height, so you'll be able to see into it from all of the different floor levels. There's a question in the back. So we haven't gotten to the place where we're having in-depth discussions regarding lockers versus no lockers. The PE athletic locker rooms are for those activities only. Should the community want to move forward with lockers within the building, then for like books and coats and the like, that would be located in a different location. So essentially a student, if they were taking PE for 1 semester, they would have their they could have their academic locker and an athletics locker.
Yeah, they can't shove anything.
So I don't think that's a good thing, obviously, and I think that there's also very minimal functionality to the old school lockers that are very narrow. We will have more in-depth discussions moving forward. We have not decided what size, shape, or any of that. That's sort of a phase 3 or a stage 3 discussion as we get into more of that design down there. All the way in the back. No, it's one locker room, just like it currently is. However, it would be designed differently. So you would have, within the locker room, there would be a portion for athletic lockers as well as PE lockers within there. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have not, again, this is very preliminary. We are just getting to the functionality of the building. There would obviously be a road that would be around the entire building. That's required for safety as much as anything else. You have to be able to get an ambulance around the building. So there would be a path that would continue so that firefighters and ambulances can get access to 100% of the building from the perimeter. There would also likely be loading and turnaround for large trucks, as well as some parking in the rear. So there would definitely be more. We just haven't gotten that far yet. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think Phil's right. We should probably, if there's anything very specific about those types of questions which are in detail, we could hold them to the end, and that's something we do want to have you write down in the next exercise. But if these are more sort of global questions, then we'll take those. Susan? Absolutely. So on the 21st at the next design meeting, we are going to have our engineering team there to talk about ways that our systems and technology can create an efficient, green, sustainable building and the types of systems that will be in the building. So I urge you to come to that. But for this actual side is south. So we have considered the orientation. So there will be a number of, punched openings. A lot of times you do get solar heat gain, which is great in the winter and terrible in the summer. Kids aren't always there in the summer. However, we will be using different facade systems so that we are blocking the unwanted, very direct lighting that's sort of higher in the sky in the summer and then in the early spring versus what is coming in a lower angle, just like we're experiencing now that it gets dark at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We want to get that so that when it's cold out, you're capturing that. So those are absolutely things that as we further develop the elevations that we will be making sure we do, because we want to make sure we are creating a building that is a life cycle cost that's low so that it's not just okay, this is your building and now you have this behemoth to take care of, and we know that the city and the taxpayers all pay for the heat and the electricity, everything else. We want to make sure that year after year we have an efficient building so that we're not spending a lot of money on utilities. It's very difficult to get a net zero school, particularly because you're lighting things in the evening, but we will try and make sure that we are capturing all the incentives for efficiency as well. There's an incentive for 5% additional reimbursement above the 35 if we create a building that is, I believe, 5% lower than code for certain things. So we will absolutely be targeting that as an achievement for the project. Yep, in the back. I do not off the top of my head. And again, this is all conceptual and where that would be, so. So, as it stands now, no, because that is not a reimbursable expense. It is something that there's been discussion about doing some fundraising to achieve. I think it's a desire in the community to have. However, it's not in the current plan. So, yes. Yep, just like they do now. Okay, so this is, again, this part is lower, so this is actually the second floor for this portion of the building, and this is the first floor on this portion of the building. So this would actually be the main level. Here we have, as you described earlier, that double locking vestibule where you get buzzed in one door and then there is someone who's able to see if you've got something sketchy under your jacket, the sort of lockdown procedure. That's the sort of double vestibule you have here. So in this particular organization, what we've done is create an ability to go into the main office directly here, just as you were describing, but you can also go into the restaurant directly. So someone who was just coming in from the community could obviously be vetted through the secure vestibule process, but then they could come directly in. For those of you who know the current high school, the program in the restaurant is lovely. It's very, very busy on certain days when it's open. However, it is all the way in the back, and so it's like this hidden gem. So a lot of what we heard from you is pull that right front and center and make that a shining star, get more folks from the community to know that it's even there because from what I've heard, they make a great sandwich and, you know, and at an affordable price. So sort of putting that there with the culinary program, the hospitality and culinary classroom, so that those programs that are teaching hospitality and culinary would be right there. And then the life skills and mock apartment on this level as well, again, with that direct access towards sort of the front. Here we have the main office on the right, where you'd have the principal and the assistant principal, conference areas, teacher workrooms, some offices. This is actually the second level of administration on the lower level. Oh God. This is the district admin. I failed to mention that before. So for someone who was visiting the superintendent, they would come in and park sort of down in here, and then this has a direct access for, because we know that Colleen's there all hours of the night, and so that there's a direct access into the district administration. So after hours, someone could go and visit them for a meeting and not have to go into the bigger school as well. So again, oh, geez, Louise. Okay. So this is directly above that district admin. This is the sort of major school main office. Yep. Yeah. So we worked with the NACTEC director on the size of the restaurant. Currently, it's not much larger than that. So it's basically, it's a little smaller than it currently is, but it will function. Additionally, by locating it next to the commons, any spill out for any larger events could take advantage of the common space. So that commons is actually like the cafeteria. So we don't call it the cafeteria anymore because it's not just for eating. It's a place for groups to meet. It's a place that serves as sort of the hub of the school. And so for here, this is the major connection point for both the student population as well as the community. So there's some storage spaces and some kitchen spaces, as well as the theater and the culinary and the restaurant serving around that common space. And those are all things that we know and we heard from you that you wanted to have sort of near each other. Again, the gym is just below, and then this area in purple would be for the alternative PE, which could be dance, it could be weightlifting, it could be aerobics, all different types of things will be designed into that purple box. And then over here, we've created this relationship between carpentry and the theater so that the students who are designing sets and building them can actually bring them directly in through overhead doors into the theater, so that that connection of building these really cool sets, you're not dragging things all over the world to get them to where the theater space. And then adjacent to that, we've got some recording studios, some practice and ensemble spaces, the band, and then the ALP, which is the alternative learning program, a special education program, will have their own entrance here. And so they have their own sort of team that works together, and they will be in that area there. And then on each end and on both floors, this level 2 and then the next floor above, there's academic clusters. So within those, there's 6 classrooms, 2 science labs and prep, some special education, and then some other CTE programs. So, for example, here it's the AOIT, which is an IT program, and Ad Design and Media on the left. So all of those serve, this is sort of the major space that is shared from everyone, and then the 2 academic pods on the end. Yes? The restaurant, yeah, it's a little smaller. It's about 800 square feet currently. So we're, when we size the restaurant, and that's not for student use. It's part of the culinary program, and it serves the community. So people would come in during the day and could have lunch there. And there's been some discussion about maybe working with the food vendor who would serve the students, but they're not connected currently. They're 2 totally different programs. Yeah, they will eat there. So yes, but it's more than a cafeteria. So it's used all day long for different types of things. It also will be the place where they eat their lunch. So the demographics for 5 years from now add an additional 60 students to the total student population. 60. So it's 695 now, and it's 755 is the projected forecast. And if you look at the stage one, you can actually read the demographic report. I also believe it's posted on the school's website. There's a lot of factors that go into that. It's not just a linear progression, which is what NESDEC normally does, and that's the number that you used for, you used NESDEC's value for Pell Elementary, but the forecast is based on a ton of different things, including the age of the existing population, the number of of childbearing age women. It has to do with the number of births that are happening. It has, Yeah, so it's more of a forecast. It is very thoughtfully determined, the number. The number will increase from 5 years to 10 years, and so we are making sure that we design this building to be flexible and that we have sited it so that, God forbid, in 20 years you need to add classrooms to the building that we are planning for, that would be able to happen. Unfortunately, that's the number we have to use to create our estimates for our reimbursement. Unless the community wants to pay for a larger building. Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's not what I heard, so I'm corrected. Thank you. Okay. I would love to see it. Over here. Okay, right now at Rogers, the auditorium is gigantic because it was designed for a population when the school was at like 2,000 students. It's 1,200 seats. The ride baseline for a reimbursable, so you could build the same thing if you wanted to rebuild that or to build something similar, is about $10 million, so just keep that in mind. So for that 1,200 seat auditorium, so this one would not have fixed seating, so it could fit any number of different uses. 2,500 square feet. That varies. It's it was 7 square feet per student. So I don't have a calculator right now. Do you want me to figure it out? Yes. It is very much smaller, and that was a deliberate decision that was made by the school building committee because of the financial considerations for the project. Correct, it is not an auditorium. Yeah. And again, and we've had a lot of discussions with educators and with the leadership about this. It's obviously a tough decision, but as we've had these discussions, a lot of the things is, well, where do we bring all the kids when we have an assembly? And in your nice brand new gymnasium that is larger than the one that's currently at Rogers, that's where you would bring the entire school together for pep rallies and things of those. We've also had discussions about graduation, and I graduated from Roger Williams, and even at my university, we graduated under a tent, just like they do at Salve and everywhere else. So on your brand new turf field that we're putting in, you can do a tent. And so the few times where you actually use it, we can find alternative solutions for a large auditorium. One of the other reasons why this was a... Okay. she's indicating that she believes we should still look at pricing for an auditorium. Okay. I mean, we can have a discussion about that. We are, at the last school building committee, we did make a motion to move forward with the plan that represents the space that you have here. So we are moving forward with that from a design perspective. We actually have very little time left to finish the schematic architectural and engineering drawings that we need to do to submit for a stage 2. As you're all aware, there's a lot more design that goes into a building in stage 3, and a lot of that happens after all this next submission. So we can certainly look at any number of things. What you would get from a reimbursement for RIDE is for 2/3 of your population. So that would be like 450 students. So to get a reimbursement on an auditorium in the new school would be very small anyways. Go ahead, Louisa.
I just wanted to say at the last meeting, Jamie Bova, the mayor, had made the suggestion that the theater be potentially opened up into the common area, which you haven't done here, but might be considered in the next thing, because you have a store and then teacher breakout spaces or, toilet. The T's are toilets. Okay. But anyhow, that would make more space for. Remember, like this kind of space is what we had talked about, to being able to open it up. What was talked about at the last meeting of the building committee is, because, as she said, it would be $10,000. That's 10% of the cost that would be for auditorium. It was just something that we thought was not viable, because we'd have to give up space for teaching and other things. So that is what the school building committee had voted on. Here you go.
All right, my question with the theater is the number of seatings after you consider square footage, but you can't count the actual theater part for square footing, is like 200 to 300 students or people. So when kids, a couple of problems. I don't want a big auditorium like we have now. That's a little overdue. And the other, but something with more significant seating, because the theater children, when they do their productions, they depend on the income. So if we have limited seating and the kids can't produce it, or we have events at school and we can't get the kids in, Thompson is grand example, just did a mentor speaker there, and it's like a breakup, because, so you have to dish out more money because they're doing more presentations. Instead of being able to do 1 or 2, you might have to do 3 or 4. But my main concern is RIDE indicates that the gym, kids have to have so many hours of gym in order to graduate. If we solely depend on the gym to do assemblies and we're taking away these hours from these kids, are we going to damage the process of these kids graduating because they're not getting their gym, or, or the gym teachers aren't able to do their job, or the sports people can't do their job because the gym is constantly being used for events or for meetings, for whatever it may be. So that's the only thing, to be so dependent on the gym to just be a second or main place, basically, a main source, isn't, to me, logical to think of, because the gym is used for other things.
Okay. So I appreciate all the comments. But I just wanted to bring you up to the last floor, and then we'll open it up for another exercise where we get your feedback on the plans. So here again, we have another 2 academic clusters. On the 3rd level, in sort of the administrative area, we have the College and Career Center, the Guidance, and the NACTech Director Office, as well as some conference areas. And then the Media Center, which is essentially a library. So yes, it's a library with books, but it's also got a lot more to it. It'll have areas for students to meet in groups, some areas for individual study, for study with groups. There's sort of different zones, so there'll be quiet spaces as well as ones that can be interactive. And that overlooks into the common space. Here, as you can see, we have sort of that control room in the second level for the theater space. We've got some art classrooms, and then adjacent to the art classrooms, there's what we're sort of calling the outdoor roof garden / gallery. And in that area, which would kind of see the ocean, we would have some, whether it's planters for some work with the sciences, it could be an area where you have outdoor sculpture that the students from the art rooms are working on. It could have an outdoor classroom where different groups can come and have class out there. It could be a lot of different things, but what's exciting is that it'll be an outdoor space that's sort of enclosed, that overlooks the site. Once the existing building is taken down, there'll be a lot of view, and you'll be able to see the athletics from up there as well. And then on the left-hand side, we've got some sensory spaces, some autism classrooms, resource, as well as the academic cluster. So as you can see, the things that we heard from you as we went through all of these workshops and exercises over the past many, many months have been rolled into this building. And I'm sure that obviously we've worked very hard with the district administration, with the teachers in trying to understand the most appropriate things to be adjacent to each other, as well as the appropriate sizing to meet a fiscally responsible budget for the project. So all of those things sort of wrap into what you're seeing in front of you. What we're going to ask you to do next, and Phil will pass out some new white sheets for those of you who've written on the ones in front of you, and we want you to just write down what your feedback is. Obviously, in a project of this size, it's sort of difficult for everyone to be happy all of the time. There's lots of sacrifices that are made in order to get a project that works for everyone in a way that is responsibly affordable, and well, we don't want to sacrifice things that are important to you either. So in looking at these plans, and I'm sorry we've run out of copies of them, but please feel free to sort of look in depth and tell us what you like, what maybe could be improved or what you'd consider working on. We want to try and stay as positive as possible because there has been a lot of work that's gone into this. So provide us your feedback, and we will look at everything, and we'll do a report out at the end, but then we'll use some of this information and sort of work with the educators again to reprioritize, and if we need to make any changes to the plan, we will do so as we move forward. So if you could sort of just get with your groups again, and hopefully you have lots of positive comments to share about the project. Lots of you guys have comments on our discussion, so we have about 10 minutes left. So you guys look like you're ready to present. So if you all could sort of turn your attention, we just want to share ideas. So a lot of this may be similar comments, but we'll go around the room and share.
Okay. We have bullets. We need to look beyond the ride reimbursement, beyond increasing, considering that. Consider a large auditorium, consider a field house. We want to have a school large enough for Newport to grow. We do not want to run out of space, have another Pell situation. We have a responsibility to our community to provide ample space. That's especially for our city council people. We all have a responsibility. But one thing we loved about the design was we love the outdoor rooftop garden, because anything that we can use the school to remind our kids of, they live in a fantastic place called Newport with amazing views of the ocean, and anything that will give them pride of having a fantastic school in this community that we all love, we're very pro that.
Excellent. I agree. All right, you guys over here.
So one of the things we wanted to kind of bounce off of what was said earlier is we would like to have the entire building, the classrooms, everything being green, environmentally advanced, as well as cost efficient. And we also are wondering if we can tie this into part of the Voc Tech growth and changes in Voc Tech, now that there's not going to be like the auto tech and cosmetology piece, but global warming is a huge issue for our kids. So I think it's important to think about that going forward. And then we were thinking, where were we? Displaying like permanent displays for student work. And we had a question about whether the funding covers furnishing, like athletics, like the track and field, tennis courts, that sort of thing.
So the FF&E is in the budget numbers that we've provided. There's an allowance of a couple, $2,600 per student for furnishings. That number is much higher than a traditional high school because you have the vocational programming, which has very expensive stuff that needs to go in it. So that's furniture, fixtures, and equipment. For the athletics, there is sort of an allowance that we're holding for site work. It will likely not cover a big grandstand area around the fields. But again, we've talked with a lot of folks about fundraising for that type of athletics here. We know are very important to the community, and it's we've sort of talked with folks about maybe creating a boosters group that would fundraise for that to upgrade it. Obviously, we're not at the point where we need to make any hard decisions. We're holding those numbers for site work, so we will have, that'll cover, your parking areas, it'll cover landscaping, it'll cover some field work, but it may not cover all of it. So there's something that would fall outside of the reimbursable amount. So we do know that might be something that is covered and has been expressed as a want to have a sort of a really great stadium here, so. I can weasel around this way. Oh, I think I'm going to go over you guys again, if that's all right. Okay. All right, guys, you want to share out your thoughts over here? Well, I do.
I'm looking at the square footage for the marine electrical pipe fitting and systems. How many students do we think will be taking advantage of those courses, and are we thinking about what those industries are going to be looking like 5, 10, 15 years down the line when robotics is really going to do a large portion of some of these CTE programs that are sort of now they need them, but are we talking about the future?
Okay, so I know we've talked to this at a few other meetings. The determination of moving forward with those programs, there is, you'd have to talk to the director of NACTech. Yes, and as I mentioned before in the past, is those are high bay shops, and we are going to design them as flexibly as possible because some of those programs, this is a 50-year building we're designing, and in 20 years, a program might not exist anymore. So if we design that high bay space to be flexible, it can be something else in the future. Again, that's important for us as designers to make sure that we're allowing the curriculum to change and ebb and flow as it will. We know education will be different in 20 years than it is today, hopefully, and we make sure that we design something that is flexible so that that can happen easily.
One of our initial thoughts, being a homeowner close to the property here at Pell, where they actually raised the elevation of the school above 6 feet. Has anyone actually talked to the neighborhood that Rogers is going to go into well, we already spoke with Phil. He said that that's actually going in the works now, but making sure that they have a huge voice in actually what is actually being placed right next to them, because the displacement of that water can actually flood and erode huge portions of neighborhoods.
So a few folks have asked questions, and so we're in the process of engaging geotechnical engineers and civil engineers to do greater research into the site. We know that there is some wetland in the back corner of that field. We also know that there are issues with water and here on this site as well as the Rogers site. So through very clever engineering, we will be able to solve all those problems. It's great that we know they exist. So we'll be doing some soil test borings very shortly so that will help us to understand the structural systems that have to be in place so that we avoid all of the potential pitfalls of having it. Just as a sort of fun fact I always tell people is basically every school in New England is on some sort of a swamp or a wetland or a former dump because that's the land that they just tend to give to the schools. So we have solved lots of issues like this many times in the past, and I think as long as what's more of a challenge is making sure that we have in the building and it's laid out appropriately. Those types of engineerings and architectural solutions, those are just things that we need to do as for ourselves to make sure that we deliver a building that works for you. So it's more important for us to hear about what you like about what's inside the building.
We had a couple of questions and then some comments. How in-depth of a look have we taken into the possibility of integrating the existing gym and auditorium into the new building from a cost perspective? A field house for restrooms at the athletic facility, also a concession stand. Perhaps this could be, again, part of that boosters fundraising effort. Regional Career Tech Center. It is a regional career and tech center. Why does Newport bear the responsibility of its construction costs? Could we get the 80% reimbursement for the segment of the building dedicated to NACTech that we would have gotten for a regionalized school? And then, again, the siting to take advantage of the southern exposure.
Those are some great comments. So we did a while back, we did estimates which included the auditorium and the gymnasium. It actually is more expensive to do an ad reno because the construction time takes longer, so all the interest and as you push out longer construction times, things get more expensive. So we did that. We also have found that there are structural issues, some pretty aggressive ones in the auditorium which render it not usable in the future. So that's why we are moving forward with an all-new solution. So I agree. I think that given, especially when we're talking to students, athletics is very important for them. It's part of their social life too. So I think that there's already people, if you want to volunteer to help with an effort for sort of guerrilla marketing for some athletic areas that will be above and beyond the value that's I'm sure everyone is looking for help to make that effort happen, and I think it's something that the community will certainly get behind as far as donating to upgrade the athletic facilities. And I think the third question about the Regional Career and Tech Center, I think Colleen and I might be able to do some homework and get back to you. It is a good question. We have not that has not been really something we've looked at it from that perspective. We are building this as a one Newport High School. That was one of the pieces that we heard loud and clear, is that it being separate was not a good thing the way it is now, and it wanted to be immersed in the high school experience. I believe that because Newport, let me not speak.
So we just had, Steve Osborne, Christine Metcalf-Lopes, and I had a conference call just yesterday about this very topic, and whether or not a specific just Aquidneck Island CTE high school could be built, and could we receive the funding to the maximum level or get as many incentives as possible. The answer is, unless the other two communities agree to it. It's almost like, because we have programs in Middletown and we have programs in Portsmouth, only if they agree to it would we be able to do that and consider it for those higher incentives. So that's kind of where we are, and I appreciated their time, and I told them that, and I said, so I just kept, I asked them to keep thinking, try to think creatively, and any ideas you get, because we are trying to work as much as possible to get as much incentive refunds as possible. So that's where we are.
Okay, did you guys have any other comments or, okay. All right, now this group.
All right, we talked a little bit about the black box theater. One thing is, if we're going to go with go in that direction, I think we need to really think about the furniture, the versatility of the uses of it, because I foresee a space that if it's a pain in the neck or it takes too much ahead of time planning to get it to be what we want to use it for, teachers aren't going to want to do it, people aren't going to want to do it, it's not going to get used, and we're going to have this abyss in the middle of the building. So that's going to be a key. We have to really think about multiple purposes and have those pretty straightforward on how to get them to be, broken down and set up. We were talking a little bit about also with the theater and the commons on the other side. Could we have a stage that was in between, kind of like this situation where you could open it up on both ends and double the capacity for an event, something like that? Would be kind of interesting if we moved the toilets and then maybe made like a garage bay that came right into the stage. Like to play around with some ideas based on possible future events that could make money and things like that. And then we were just looking at the outside. I think it's more because we're not focusing on the grounds around, but there's a lot of open space, wondering about another field, some other ideas with the property around. But again, I think we're just not there yet. Is that it?
You want to share?
Sure. No, I do. That's okay. What about the gym parking on this plot of land? You gonna walk in for basketball games, volleyball, through the district main entrance to get to it, or?
There'll be some parking in the rear of the building or like an athletic at the gym.
Okay. Okay. And are you concerned about how close the carpentry and band room is? I mean, is it going to be, the band room going to be like insulated or soundproof type of thing? So when they're cutting things in carpentry, it's not going to be so much interference with what they do?
We've had some discussions already about that, and we, as architects, we can create wall construction which will make those acoustically separate. You can use acoustic glass. The programmatic relationships are important to have, and we've heard that very loud and clear from the community. So that becomes something that we have to solve as through architecture.
Okay, and in this program or booklet or diagram, there's no custodial closets listed. I'm sure that gets worked into the, not just one, it needs few as time goes on. What about outlets? This building is, if you go to plug the things in this building, there's not enough outlets in it. Now that far wall, like for instance, is places where there's just not enough power located.
We're so far from that. We know that there needs to be lots of outlets, but, we'll make sure as we go, and that's sort of a level detail we're not anywhere near yet.
And as you know right now, there is no leaking problems from the roof it is, but not so much the foundation at Rogers. Right now, yes. Is there? No, there isn't, right?
There's all sorts of issues, weather-related to the building. There's lots of spots where water is getting in around the storefront. So it's not the foundation that's leaking, it's the wall construction assembly itself.
Okay. My concern is that the same thing is that you're going down to an area that is a wet land again, down near the gym in that area. It's very wet down there in that area. So again, water seems to get in places all the time. No matter how much you're going to pay for the drainage or some kind of system, I don't know if it outweighs by moving some of it out of there because of that amount of money you have to spend. Thank you.
All right. So we'll take a couple of questions, and then everyone, we're sort of over time. So if you need to go, you want to do over here? Home. One more.
The ad media design, is that the same amount of space?
It's a little bit smaller. Right now they're in 2 classrooms, so we're creating 1 space. And by using more flexible furnishings, the intent was that it could be a little smaller with different furniture and configurations that it is now. They won't get rid of anything now. Right now, there's 2 different spaces. It's not the most efficient layout as it could be. So when we get to the point where we're laying out the rooms themselves, we will look at making a more efficient way of the space functioning. So although it's a little smaller, through carefully selected furniture and updates like that, you can create a smaller footprint for the same space. Okay. Yep. Okay, so the values there were, if you could please keep your comments to yourself or wait your turn. Thank you. So the space allocations are for the state mandates for CTE. We reviewed them with the administration. This next week, I'm going to be sitting down with all of the teachers, and we'll go through that. The space, the sort of footprint of that can be broken up into different spaces. So, for example, we know that in a lot of the shop spaces, they'll need toilet rooms and some locker areas for changing. So that'll all be fit in the footprint. So if there's a desire to have 2 spaces within that larger footprint for the like AOIT, for example, or for the ad design, we can certainly work with that as well. So we're not to the point where we're starting to carve up those different spaces just yet. But we will certainly be making sure we touch base with the teachers and make sure that it's a space where, in some number of years that it's flexible enough for the teacher there now, and then when they retire, whoever's going to come in next.
Didn't want the microphone, but this is probably ridiculous, but the roofs aren't going to be flat, right?
They will be pitched, but they will look flat. So yes, it's more effective to have flat roofs.
Unless, like UMass Dartmouth, everything leaks.
Well, that's a different story. I work there. I teach there as well. We will make sure that they are sloping and they have all the appropriate drainage that they need so that they will not leak and they will not hold water. But we're likely not going to have, residential style roofs or pitched roofs.
But they will be suitable for New England.
Correct. Yes.
Hi, I was wondering, since you're taking out cosmetology for girls to go into as a field, I was wondering if we could, since we have such a huge maritime, could we do either nursing or a CNA? So that way kids that are really not per se college bound will have some other career path that are female that would like to attend something else.
So we have talked a little bit about that. I can have Colleen or Robert speak to that. I do want to say that cosmetology is for boys and girls. So, there's a... Yeah, and so is the maritime. There's actually, from what I understand, there's a lot of women in the carpentry programs. So I think that we're seeing, it's particularly because we're switching the maritime programs tend to be a little, they're more robust than if they were just an electrical program. There's different things. You're seeing a lot more like sort of quality within everything. So I think your comment about CNA, female can do any of those programs. Okay. Yes. Yeah, I'd have to sort of speak to Robert, but from what I understand, we're seeing just more interest across the board in all of the programs from women, so none of them are exclusionary to any gender, just for the record. They're sort of all women, I understand, but there you go. Anyone else have a comment? All right, well, I want to thank you for coming. We'll have a number of different events at the next one on the 21st. We appreciate your comments and time, and hope to see you at the next event on the 21st. Thank you, guys.
Okay, quick question.
Sure.